Om Stapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupine avatara varishthaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha Jananim Sharadam Devi Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Sitva Pranamami Muhurmuhu Namasri Etirajaya Vivekananda Suri Satchit Sukasvarupaya Swamini Tapaharine. So let us continue with our study in a discussion of the great text Prakarana Grantha Vivekachudamani, written by the great Shankar Bhagavad-pada. So, we saw here in this, the Guru takes up 7 questions from the Shishya and tries to answer them to his satisfaction, leading to the ultimate mukti or the goal of life. So, as we saw last time, the questions are: what is bondage? How did it arise? How does it continue? How is one released from bondage? What is this anatman? What is paramatman? And how to distinguish between the atman and paramatman, etc. So, actually the Guru takes up the 4th question, namely, mukti kaisi hogi? How liberation is achieved? So, in short, one should develop vairagya, then samadhamadi, sampatti one should acquire, and then one should adopt sannyasa, giving up all karmas. Then only the ultimate knowledge is obtained, and then only on the basis of the upadesha on the scriptural text from his guru, he should contemplate upon them, discriminate between the real and the unreal, or the anatman and the atman, and then slowly attain the state of nirvikalpa samadhi, and one should know that how he is non-different from atman, and then finally at that time, after giving up all karmas, sarva karma tyaga, not only kamya and naimittika, but also nitya karmas, what is to be done every day, and then it goes to the state of highest realization. So here there is a main question. That's what we were talking. Shankaracharya also says that it is not that all karmas are to be abandoned in the beginning itself. पहले ही सब छोड़ने की बात वो भी नहीं करते हैं. The aspirant has to indulge in all that in the beginning with the learning of the Vedas, performance of karma stated in them, etc. And then slowly one proceeds, withdraws his mind from sense pleasures and kamya karmas, desire-oriented action, kamya, desiring something, karmas with a desire, because and then finally, due to the one develops the desire for atman, atmecha, and then he comes to get the highest. Now the question is, the type of sannyasa that Shankara talks about is vidvat sannyasa, one who is really realized truly at the highest level of knowledge. So, of course, this is from his own experience, from his own knowledge of the scriptures, etc. So actually, as we were explaining last time, here comes the real genius of Swami Vivekananda, because Swami Vivekananda did not teach anything other than Advaita. If you see all the lectures that he delivered in the West, he hardly, probably once or so only, he spoke about Sri Ramakrishna. He did not even take the name of his guru. It was all lectures on the highest principles of Vedanta only. But still, Swami Vivekananda gave his own distinctive path, which is obviously slightly different from what was described by Shankara. Although the goal of both is same, and both only talked about the highest Advaitic philosophy, and yet Swamiji gave something different. How different it is, how relevant it is, ये युग के लिए कितनी प्रयोजन है वो, that these are some of the things we should know. See, all of us have been literally saved. According to the definition, we are also not Vidvat sannyasis. The mission also, it is only Vividisha. That is the desire to know the truth. So people are taken as monastic aspirants, those who have the desire to know the truth. Vidvat sannyasis are those who have realized the truth. That be so, then none of us could really become a monk. If you have to exactly follow the rules and regulations of the Shankara tradition, that's why in Shankara Mats, the Shankaracharya initiates just one person into his to sannyasa as his successor. You don't find, excepting the Guru and the Shishya, no one else stays. So only they. They're all surrounded by those who are in the Grihastha ashrama. But Swamiji completely threw open this door to many others. He said, anyone who has such an inclination, who wants to know the truth, who is ready to follow the path of Tyaga, जो त्याग की जीवन अवलंबन करने के लिए तैयार है, give all of them such a chance. Let them struggle. Not that all of us are realizing Brahma Jnana or we are going to the highest, but at least we are struggling in our own way. That's what Swamiji said. Once you have the desire to know the truth, to know the highest, let such people be given a chance. So, that is why, because he clearly understood the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. Even, if you go through the Kathamrita also very clearly and very minutely, Sri Ramakrishna again and again says, it's not necessary to completely go away from the world or to call this world as completely mithya, etc. Yes, these are all, different standpoints. Each idea is true from one perspective, from one explanation, one angle, etc. But it's also possible to give them the other explanations. Can you ever believe that if you look at the life of the Holy Mother, was Holy Mother a true sannyasin or not? She had the highest qualities of renunciation in her. Even the greatest of sannyasins were incomparable. She was incomparable to them. Because she was त्याग की मूर्त विग्रह थी. She was the embodiment of Tyaga. She, never cared the least for her body. Ultimately, the sannyasa, giving, etc. What is the root of all that? The root of all that is getting rid of the idea, I am the body, I am the mind. If you weigh Holy Mother's qualities of Tyaga in that scale, should be rated very, very high, because she never, ever, even for a moment, thought about her body. Otherwise, how a person could work from morning 3 o'clock to night 11, day after day, without the least irritation, without the least cursing, without the least demurring, nothing, ever ready. 3 बजे कोई आते हैं, फिर भी उनको भी खिलाना है, तुरंत खुद ही आ जाती थी. She would come, she would sit, she would परोसती थी, then she would, only when they are given something, she would be happy. So that kind of, completely putting the body to the highest test of service, not caring for it even in the least. As long as she was active and healthy, she would take food only after all others take. Even if they request, even on her own birthday, she refused. Said, how can I eat when my children have not taken food? That was her, refrain. That was her attitude. So here was a person who was so completely rooted in the idea that I am not the body. She did not make any big statements, she did not give lectures, she did not write books, but she demonstrated every day by her life that she was completely above the idea of body. And yes, body is okay. What about the mind? The highest kind of mind. She would say that people come and tell me, yeah, Shanti, Shanti, आकी बोल रहे हैं, मैं तो कभी भी अनुभव नहीं किया. They come and tell me again and again they are feeling Ashanti. Dear, I have never experienced it even once. Even in Dakshineshwar, when she was living under such difficult conditions, a small room, hardly enough space for a tall person to stretch and lie down. In that condition, she could somehow manage, and with so many things necessary for Thakur's seva and guests coming now and then. I think all of you have visited now, but no one can live in such a small room. and there is no facilities for taking bath or for answering calls of nature, etc. And there is nothing nearby. She had to go early in the morning at 3 o'clock, and again only when all the devotees, etc., had left after 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, she would get a chance to move out from her room. But she says, I always used to feel as if a picture of bliss was placed in my heart. So, what does it show? That she had completely gone beyond the idea of body as well as mind. Her mind was completely under her control. She never allowed the mind to dominate her. She was always in a state beyond the idea of body, beyond the idea of mind. She was always immersed in that immense bliss, namely Satchitananda. So, but she was in white clothes. She was always surrounded by women devotees, householders, and Radhu and her brother, her brother's family, and others. She would always go with a lot of householders whenever she toured, wherever she lived. It was just the scene of a very normal, ordinary, worldly family. Her brothers and their children, etc., were terribly worldly, always desiring for money and goods, etc., etc. She always lived in such a situation, yet had such a high state of mind. So that shows, she was far, far ahead of sannyasis. Sannyasins, they go away from the samsara. They are not surrounded by worldly people. They live alone. They live in forest. They live in guhas. They live on the banks of sacred rivers. So at least externally, they get such a fine situation and an environment, atmosphere to build their lives. But here is a person constantly living amidst most worldly people and yet retaining a mind of such extraordinary stature. I think, we'll have to rewrite the ideas of Vidisha and Vidva sannyasins. So she did not put on Geriba. So, probably in this Ramakrishna Vivekananda Sharada tradition, this completely a new idea, a new dimension added to the life of Tyaga. What is a life of renunciation? Does it consist in external symbols and clothes, etc.? Or is it much more than that? But Mother did not decry that. She paid the highest respects to sannyasis. She was so careful. See, it's in Radhu, maybe some household devotee, she went, she was going so carelessly about, and the edge of her cloth touched a monastic. She scolded that devotee like anything. Do you know they are all renouncing monks? Do you want to drag them to the world? You have to be extremely careful. When Radhu went about, making, jingling noise of her anklets, she scolded, remove it immediately. Do you know sannyasins are living here? So now here is a person who very much appreciated the idea of sannyasa, gave the greatest place to that, and honored all of them. She herself had given Giriva class to so many, yet in her own personal life, she set an example by living such a great life of Tyaga, but always externally, she was seen to be just like a householder, like a normal housewife, not only the normal, the most ordinary type of housewife, constantly doing things related to household, like cleaning, cooking, distributing, feeding, and so on. What else she was doing? What do we get in all the Mayar Katha, etc.? Hardly we get, only with very select few should talk something very deeply spiritual. If they are very interested and if they show great inclination towards such thing, that was different. Otherwise, should hardly even broach such topics. But yet, she showed the highest example. If you go to Sri Ramakrishna, it's totally different. A person who was day and night immersed in such extraordinary heights of, Advaita Bhava, with great difficulty he could come down. His mind would always be eager to merge into Nirvikalpa Samadhi and lose complete idea of body. With great difficulty, he would bring the mind down. He would say he would have some water, have some speech, something. He would make fun. He would do something so that the mind is kept at the level of the world. Otherwise, it would soar to that extraordinary heights of Nirvikalpa. But yet, he lived in Dakshineshwar, he lived in a situation, in an atmosphere. It was not a forest, it was not a guha, it was not a river bank. He was always in white clothes. He never called himself a sannyasin, although he had done all that with Totapuri, the ceremonies, etc. And in fact, he had formally taken probably sannyasa also, but he never called himself so. As long as his mother was there, he used to care for her. And he cared for Sharda Devi, his legally wedded wife. He even thought of providing for her after his exiting the world. So, this is a uniquely different model, a new model, so appropriate for this age, so appropriate for this period, this world, so that, a large number of people could be brought into the domain of the spiritual world. Otherwise, 99.99% of the mankind would be classified as unspiritual and called unfit for any spiritual endeavor. Whereas Thakur Mas Swamiji, they clearly said, no, whosoever has even the least inclination, whosoever is ready to accept these great principles, these values, whosoever is trying to put them into practice in however little or insignificant or whatever way it is, still they are eligible to be called as spiritual aspirants. All of them can strive, all of them can practice. In due course of time, the more and more they intensify their sadhana, they will really reach greater and greater heights, and they were very, very clear and specific about it. That's why, when Swamiji, Swamiji was a great visionary. During his Bharat Parikrama, except he clearly saw that he was with the Rajas, he was with the poorest of the poor, he had gone to the forest, he was in the Himalayas, he had met monks, he had met monastery monks. He saw that a handful of monks were roaming from place to place, just only talking about Brahma Satya, Jagan Mithya, what sadhana they were doing, and what was their utility to the world. Then he saw that, no, here is a wonderful opportunity. If people can be, brought under this fold, this parampara, this tradition, it's possible to give their life, their action, whatever they do, a spiritual drift. That's why he's established the Ramakrishna mission and placed before it this idea, Atmano Mokshartam Jagat Hitaicha. Yes, Atmano Mokshartam, that is first and foremost. Each and every one of us would strive for our own mukti, our own moksha, our own Atma Sakshatkar, our Brahmagyan. Yes, but you cannot neglect, you cannot give up, you cannot be not involved in this Jagat Hita or service to humanity. So he combined and gave a very beautiful idea that, yes, after all, what does the traditional sannyasa mean? What do they ultimately want to achieve? They want to realize the difference between the Atman and the Anatman, give up the Anatman, as Shankaracharya says here, and realize the Atman. For that, what they are talking about? They are talking about, being completely away from all actions. But then the goal is to realize this Atman, to get rid of this ego, to go beyond this ego and reach a state where, there is a complete, ultimately, the anatman also, it is rooted in the idea of the ahankara, the me and the mind. Aham mama iti naisargigoyam loka vyavahara. Something like that starts in the Shankara Bhashya. See, the me and mind, the giving up that, as Thakur says, the kacha me, that is the real crux of the matter ultimately. If you want to give up this anatman, where does the anatman really consist? The idea, body and mind, that we are the body and the mind. Not only that, you trace it further, that relates to the idea of the hankara. So Swamiji said that when you serve others with such intensity, with such sincerity, and with such eagerness, obviously you are thinking less and less and less about your own self. You are able to really give up the idea you are the body, because service demands such a sacrifice, such tyaga. He says, what is the highest idea of karma yoga? Swamiji clearly says is self-abnegation. Completely giving up oneself even to the point of death. That's why, he says that beautiful story, in Mahabharata, after the Yudhishthira's Rajasuya Yajna, where he had given such gifts in such large quantity. Everybody said that, no one has seen such sacrifice. Then when mongoose came there, half of its body was in gold. It rolled on the floor where the yajna had been conducted and got up and said, who said this is a great sacrifice? This is nothing. Then he said, listen to me. There was a family of Brahmins in a village. There were husband and wife and two children. There were terrible drought in that area for years, and they were all dying of starvation and hunger. Somehow, this Brahmin one day could get some, you know, uh, flour as bhiksha. Then they had cooked it, and the four of them were about to sit and take. They had a knock, and Atiti Devo Baba, they let that man in. He was ravenously hungry. He was mad. He said, I'm dying of hunger. Give me something to eat immediately. The husband gave his share. He took it and said, you have only done a disservice. My hunger has increased. You have given me such a small quantity. Similarly, the wife and both the children gave their shares. This man ate all that, then drank water, and then blessed the family and left. That night, all the four of them died out of starvation. The Mango said, the next day I went to that place. There was a particle, a grain of that cooked food on the floor. I rolled, and half of my body became gold. I've been going all over the world in search of such sacrifice, such tyaga, comparable to that, so that the other part of my body could also be converted into gold. But I have not been able to find anything equivalent to that. Such is the level of tyaga. So Swamiji says, Karma Yoga, the highest ideal is self-abnegation, even to the point of the death of the individual. So, what can there be? What can be a greater test of the idea not identifying with the body? We're all afraid of death. If you can serve to such an extent that you don't care even for your own body, you are afraid, you are not afraid even to give it up in death to serve others. Obviously, if you go to that level, you would have reached a very high state of mind where you are above the body and above the mind. And that is what will prepare you for the highest type of knowledge. And then what happens? Swamiji did not really discuss, it was not necessary. In such a mind which is so pure, which is so bereft of the idea of me and mine, जिसके अंदर इतनी अहंकार नहीं है, मैं और मेरा नहीं है, ऐसे मन जरूर प्रस्तुत है ऐसे कोई ब्रह्म ज्ञान प्राप्त करने के लिए. Such a mind is really ripe for the highest knowledge, and such a knowledge is bound to be reflected in such a mind. So, Swamiji, wonderfully based on the teachings of Thakur, he had thoroughly studied them, thoroughly understood them, lived with Thakur in close proximity. He understood what it is, how it is possible. So then he came up with this new idea, the new formula whereby anybody can become a spiritual aspirant, whether you are a householder or a sannyasin. Yes, but no, ultimately, whatever Shankara says, that is true, that the more and more you practice this idea of Tyaga, more and more you bring it into operation in your life, that is how you would become fit for the highest kind of knowledge. So, till then one might hear, one may just get a glimpse of it, one may again and again reflect, but unless you really practice it, the more and more you practice, more and more you'll be able to understand these great truths, and that is how it's possible, the highest knowledge is possible in such minds. So, he did not, unlike the old traditional Advaitins or the Shankarite school scholars or those great souls, etc., whether they don't come, you are not prepared, you are not eligible, you have not done the sadhana chatushtai. Even in the first question, Nitya, Nitya Vastu Viveka, you have not done it, you go. So that way, everybody was eliminated, nobody was allowed in. But Swamiji opened the door. No, you come. You are not yet prepared, but you are a Vividisha. You have that thirst for knowledge. You want to know. You are doing it step by step. You are trying hard in your own way. You come. You may be a toddler. You may be in kindergarten. I don't want to enroll students straight away into PhD. I am not looking for students who have done their post graduation and were brilliant graduates who alone can be enrolled for PhD. I am ready to enroll students from kindergarten itself. So slowly over a period of years, 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, whatever happens. So, that means, you see, Swamiji in one stroke, by his great genius, he brought about several reforms. First of all, you see, he saw that when there is so much of poverty and illiteracy, etc., even, even the Advaita Vedanta accepts Vyavaharika and Paramarthika Satyas. Although there are schools which say that world doesn't exist at all, where is the world? Where the world is completely Maya, Alik, Mithya, etc. All those schools are there, but there are a large number of Vedantic schools also accept the idea of the existence of the world. They say it is Vyavaharik Satya. It's the relative truth, not the Paramarthika Satya. And if you leave the Shankara school of Vedanta, Vedanta is not only Advaita, there are so many other schools of Vedanta. All other schools completely accept the world as real. So you cannot have a philosophy which would suit only a very limited or a very small, minuscule minority of people. So with that idea, if you want to take the entire humanity, no, but not only that, what about other faiths? Those days, no one knew or no one had even heard about that, although the Hindu tradition always talks of the idea, ekam sat vipra bahuda vadanti, still they were only talking amongst the Hindus, amongst the different sects of Hindus. So, here itself, accepting the Kevala Advaitins, all others accepted the idea. They gave different levels of reality to the world. Like like the complete Dvaita school, they consider it complete real. And the Vishishtadvaitins gave us partial reality, saying that yes, they're all angsha of God or the ultimate reality. So even in some schools of Advaita, they accepted the idea they are Vyavaharik. For relative world, they accepted that. And if you take other schools like Christianity, Islam, etc., they all believe the world to be completely real. So Swamiji came out with a philosophy, it was world embracing. He said you don't have to completely condemn it. Give it its own, its due. As Thakur also used to say, it's the play of God. It's a Bhagwan ki Leela Bhumi hai. In some way, you give it some reality. Think that all those who are there are all children of God, His own creations. And by serving them, by serving the God in man, you really evolve as a spiritual aspirant. So Swamiji opened the doors for a large number of people all over the world to become spiritual aspirants. Otherwise, none of us would have ever qualified even to pursue a spiritual path because we have not even crossed the first of the four sadhana, namely Nitya, Nitya Vastu Viveka. So Swamiji said, no, it's possible with all these problems, difficulties, inadequacies, still one can enroll in the spiritual school for spiritual uplift. So that means a large number of householders all over the world have come in. And he also said, yes, even amongst them, if there are people who really feel, staying away from the family, embracing monasticism, maybe in a formal way, may not be the highest kind of Vidva sannyasins, but there can be Vividisha sannyasins, and then, they can really strive, try hard, try to understand through these disciplines, all these Nitya, Nitya, Vastu, Viveka, etc., etc. Swamiji gave a new twist, a new kind of an explanation whereby living in a monastery, taking some ideas, not totally discarding the idea of the body you want to start with, but slowly progressing towards a higher ideal, towards such a view, it's possible for many to evolve, and thereby he gave an opportunity for very ordinary people like us to become monastic aspirants. But then it is true, even in the order, there have been extraordinary souls who have really had the highest level of Brahmajnana. Not only Thakurman, Swamiji are the direct disciples, even the next generation, there were extraordinary monks who were really considered Brahmajnanis. There were quite a few like that. So, the highest truth, highest realization is not ruled out for anyone, irrespective of the station of life, whether one is a householder or a sannyasi. So Swamiji also, when he said, Narendra, I can show you God, but then you must follow disciplines. He never said that. Of course, Thakur always would emphasize Tyaga, Kamni Kanchan Tyaga, only Tyagis alone can. That is true. But then it does not mean that one should formally take up Tyaga even at the beginning. When, aspirants, those who are really struggling, those who have, deep love for such an ideal, who are very sincere aspirants, can come, attempt, struggle, slowly evolve. And as they go forward in their life, more and more the idea of Tyaga will come into their life. They will be able to embrace renunciation more and more. जैसे जैसे आगे बढ़ते रहते हैं, उन सबको जीवन में त्याग की प्रभाव जरूर होगा, उसी से वो आगे बढ़ सकते हैं आध्यात्मिक जीवन में. So that was his idea. So, even in the monastery, he gave a chance to very ordinary, very, very ordinary aspirants, very ordinary people, because he thought that this should be made more open, more liberal, allowing a large number of people. Not only that, Earlier, only people from a particular caste, only the Brahmins, they alone were considered, fit for sannyasa. He said, no, anyone can come. But he said, Swamiji's idea was, it's not that why should there should be such a small community. You can enhance, you can make everybody a Brahmana. That's why even in the mission, after 5 years at the time of Brahmacharya Diksha, everybody is given sacred thread. Sabko jani dete. That means you're all aspiring to become Brahmins. Who is a true Brahmana? Brahma janati Brahmana. The knower of Brahman is a true Brahmana. So you are not a knower as such, but then you are an aspirant. You are trying hard. You have taken of that. That's your vrata. That's your vow. So it's okay. You are qualified. You come. That is how he integrated all those ideas, and in a very beautiful way gave a new synthesized form of monastic life, as well as householders being a spiritual aspirant. Everything he integrated into this Ramakrishna Vivekananda Sharada traditional parampara, and that's how we have got a beautiful approach to spiritual life. In fact, in the West, when they could not find anything, when it becomes so popular, they said that no, is a Shudra is not eligible for sannyasa. Is a fake sannyasa. That's what they're trying to do the prachara. And nobody could succeed because his knowledge of the Brahman, his purity of character, the fact that he was so deeply established the highest Advaitic ideals, they stood guard for him. They proved again and again that he was, See, the point is, again and again, this is what Swamiji emphasized and proved even in a more glorious manner. At least, Sri Ramakrishna had very little by way of external comforts. He lived a very hard life. He could hardly eat anything. He was always suffering from stomach trouble, this and that. And he lived a very frugal life. Although it was not a monastery, it was very tough. Mother, though, toughest of lives as far as individuals were concerned. Obviously, her life was far more tougher than any monastery. कोई ऐसे कोई आश्रम में भी ऐसी कठिन जीवन किसी को जीना नहीं पड़ता है जैसी माँ रहती थी. So he had hardly anything, just 2 pieces of cloth, some little food, that too at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She lived a most frugal life, an extremely tough and austere life. But Swamiji, he was in the West, he had a coat and nice clothes, he was living in very rich houses, he was the guest of the very fashionable and the elite of the American society. But where was his mind? That was his greatness. So he again proved that, yes, if necessary, if you are to be in such company where you are in such externally, maybe such bhugar or anything like that, but it's possible to keep one's mind at such a high level that one need not come down at all. So it was proved again and again. He'll be talking, then suddenly, he'll be totally lost. He'll be in a different mood, and nobody would be able to approach him or even talk to him. He'll be so indrawn. Every now and then, that kind of mood would set in, and he would simply dissociate himself for everything. He'd be talking, joking. Maybe it's a rich house, there are good people, some good dishes, these are being cooked, etc., etc. Suddenly, they will find that he was not there at all, and he was somebody else. People who had lived day and night with him, lived closely with him, have written reminiscences about him, have again and again they said that in what a high state of mind he was. Particularly, in those days in the Thousand Island Park, etc. If you see those the talks, the discussions, his mind was such an elevated level. Of course, externally things were there, winter clothing were there, heater was there, maybe some good food was also available. He was surrounded by devotees, adoring devotees who doted upon him, but his mind was so absorbed in something else. Not only that, that very famous incident, that lady, they saw that Swamiji was about to go for a lecture. He was again standing before the mirror, adjusting his tie, adjusting his turban, and she was shocked. Oh, this person, day and night, he talks about Advaita. World is unreal, boys. One has to go beyond body and mind and the highest Atman. And he's so worried and is constantly, trying to set right his turban, the way it is wound, and so on. हमेशा जो आत्मा की जो बात करते हैं, इनकी इतने शरीर की तरह ध्यान, क्या बात है? Immediately, like a flash of lightning. She never asked anything. But Swamiji immediately told her, see, madam, I have to go and lecture. Somehow the mind refuses to get into the idea of body. Again, that's why I'm trying in various ways. Otherwise, I cannot go and lecture. Because if you have to lecture, you have to come to the level of the senses. But then if the mind is deeply absorbed in something very perennial and of a very extraordinary nature, how is it possible for such a person to come down and give any talk? He said, that's why again and again I'm struggling hard so that the mind would somehow get accept the idea of the body, and then I could go on lecture. So that was his nature. So, again and again it was proved towards the end how he really gave his body in Mahasamadhi, etc. It was very, very clear that all these were all, aberrations or exceptions which he invited upon himself. For him, it was not necessary at all. He was, as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, he was a dhyana siddha, and his very nature was to be deeply immersed in dhyana samadhi all the time. But he did all this for the sake of mankind. He wanted to show a new path, a new method, something so that, uh, सबके लिए ऐसे किया. So in his own life, it was very, very different. So, if you look at this is the extraordinary contribution of Swami Vivekananda. So in that sense, although that's why if you examine even his own life, he has proved even that beyond doubt that even if you are surrounded by such luxury, even if you live under such conditions, it is still possible to elevate your mind to such a level so that you don't have to be a part of all that enjoyment. Although physically you may be here and there everywhere. They used to say how much you used to like ice cream and this and that, but this person can just in a flash of lightning, you could withdraw and dive deep into the highest idea of the Atman or the highest truth. So probably Swamiji's birthday Tithi Puja is coming this week, next Thursday, there's 4th is Swamiji's birthday. All of you can come. We are allowing people to come to the ashrama for the celebration. There will be puja, huma, bhajan, etc. But probably, this topic we can, in Hindi, for the sake of those who don't follow English so much, we can discuss this idea once again. So, the first question, that's why, the idea, how to get mukti, how liberation is achieved, that has been discussed. Then, of course, we are only in the introduction. Later on here, we are just trying to understand briefly what is given in the Vivekachudamani, what is the content, and then slowly we'll go. Finally, we'll take up sloka by sloka. That will take quite some time. Only after we clear this introduction and the analysis of Vivekachudamani itself, what is there in which part, then slowly, finally, we'll come to that. Then he takes up the fifth question. Ko sau anatma. What is this अनात्मन? क्योंकि टू रियलाइज आत्मन, आत्मा के जानने के लिए आपको तो अनात्मन से उसके अलग करना चाहिए ना. इट हैज टू बी सेपरेटेड फ्रॉम द अनात्मन. देन ओनली इट इज पॉसिबल टू रियलाइज व्हाट इज द आत्मन. सो इसलिए देन व्हाट इज दिस अनात्मन? There are three kinds of bodies that we are supposed to possess. That is the Sthula Sharira, the gross body, Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body, and then Karana Sharira, the causal body. Then the Guru points out that all these three belong to the class of Anatman because they satisfy one or more the following reasons. First of all, the one another satisfies these three, It is gross, Sthula Sharira, stool hai. Then it is what is possessed, that is, it belongs to somebody. Okay, mera sharir hai, it is my body. So, there is a sense of possession. So, somebody possesses it, so it is an Atman. Then it is an aggregate made of parts. सब कुछ मिलके आपके शरीर के अंदर कितनी भाग है, कितनी डिवीजन है, So it's not one integral whole, it consists of so many parts. Together we call it body, but it's very clear it's made of parts. So obviously, similarly, if you take it as even body and mind, again there are two. So there is no oneness or homogeneity. It's made of parts. It is aggregate. So it is. This is one of the reason. Then it is comprised of gunas. Sattarajatama. All these gunas are very much present in this our system called our body. Obviously, sometimes you are in the mood of sattva, then you are in the rajas, then tamas. Sattva is knowledge and ananda, rajas is intense activity, tamas is sleep or slackness, etc. And then एक अपवित्र है, पवित्र नहीं है. कितनी जरा अपवित्रता है इसके अंदर है. There are so many kinds of impurities attached to the body. All these, of course, probably will be discussed in detail when we go to the actual slokas. And then it's not there in all the Trikal mein nahi hai. You see, Bhoot, Vartaman, Bhavishya, the three kalas, the past, present, and future, they are not there in all the time. If they are not in the present, if they are in the present, they are not in the past, they are not in the future. So because they are not in all the three states of time, this is another limitation or difficulty. Then again, they are limited by space, time, and the objects. The sharir has जागा की कोई इसकी सीमित अवस्था है. If you consider the body, it can only occupy a certain amount. It is conditioned by space, it's conditioned by time. So it's considered by causation and the objects, etc. Then it is also it again suffers from another defect, namely it is seen and also it is not seen. That is drashta and nashta. Drashta nashta swabhava. So because you see, it's not always perceived. Well, in a certain condition, supposing you are busy, your mind is not there, even if it's front of you, you are not able to see. So this body is not always felt that way. Sometimes you perceive it, sometimes in some conditions it's not seen. It's not always there. So that's why there are very clear arguments like Srishti Drishtivad. So our drishti shishtivat, they see, and according to your sight, there is creation. So sometimes they are seen, sometimes not observed. You say, oh, mera man wahan nahi tha. Where was it? It was somewhere else. So the idea being seen, being felt, not felt is not always there. Because as then later on you will see in the Atman, it contradicts all this. Then there will be a question of continuity, permanence, etc. Never lost even for a second. All those things will come later. Then it is produced. It is the effect. सृष्टि होता है, क्रिया है वहाँ, कृतका or the creation, production. It is produced, obviously, very clearly. The body is produced. Then ये शरीर मन की क्या है? They are known, they are not the knower. Because नहीं पता मेरा शरीर है, मेरा मन है. Then what is the idea? मेरा means I know them. I am not that. So they are known and they are not the knower. So this is another reason why it is an Atman. And then they are ruled and they are not the ruler. मैं शरीर की यहाँ ले जाता हूँ, मन की यहाँ ले जाता हूँ, ये करने के लिए बोल रहा हूँ, वो ही करने के लिए बोल रहा हूँ, वो मान लेगा. It's obeying. So again it is ruled and it is not the ruler. And then it is dependent and not self not self-subsistent or not self or established by itself, because always dependent. ये शरीर बहुत सारी चीज के ऊपर निर्भर है. आपकी शरीर इस अवस्था में मैं शरीर वैसे है, उस अवस्था में मैं शरीर ऐसे है, उस अवस्था में मैं नहीं है. So again there are so many conditions in which they function differently. So then these are so many ways in which the Anatman is established. So to know what is Atman, one should know Anatman. So what is Anatman? Anatman is something which has belonged to the all these the Anatman essentially the body, the personality consists of the three bodies, namely Stula, Sukshma, Kara, Sharira. All these have one or more of these 12 qualities, and that is why they are all Anatma. Then how does he, what the Guru takes up next? Then we will see next week. It will take time because it's a difficult subject. Let us go through slowly. Huh? Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tatsat. Sri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.